Welcome to I Think You Should Hear This, a podcast exploring people's journeys of growth, adversity, and self-discovery. For this episode, I have with me Brent Cosnett.
Thanks, mate. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So we connected in late 2019.
Yep.
Going into 2020, did a pre-season program with you for footy.
Yep, that's it.
At the gym in Carrum Downs, which I found a lot of alignment at the time in later on, I found so much you were doing was stuff that I started to learn after. Which was like the Ben Patrick sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah. You saw the athletic training, yep. Knees over toes guy, yep.
Yeah. And like after that, I was like, oh, that's what we were already doing.
Yeah.
And then, COVID happened, lockdowns, didn't see each other for a while. And then I was like, people sharing me stuff that you're posting online.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like reconnected through that.
Yeah.
And then, another couple of years later, having gut issues, do the protocol with you, that helped. And now, here we are today. It was pretty cool.
Mate. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, absolutely. Been a pretty crazy 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so much has changed. And it's funny how like little things just keep like popping back up. And yeah, it's really cool. I would love to get people to learn a bit about your story and how you came from the gym into blood analysis and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, had a gym which I started about 2014, and we're doing like personal training, one-on-one stuff, nutrition, coaching, all that stuff, and had that for 8 years all up. We obviously had the COVID, so in 2020 we were shut for 8 months or 9 months. And then 2021 in the summer, we were open, at the start of 21, we were open again, everything was good. And I just had a feeling we're going to enter, lockdowns again. And so had an opportunity to sort of get out of that. And my manager, the guy who was my manager, head coach, took over. And sure enough, we're locked down in 2021 again. And I felt really bad because we just taken over the gym and it was locked down for another 6 or 7 months. And then I thought, during the last couple of years I was doing the gym, I had my own, obviously, gut issues, and that was in 2017 they came, had terrible gut issues, brain fog, chronic fatigue, all this stuff, and then found someone to help me, and he was using blood analysis and figured out what was going on with my gut and gave me a protocol, and eventually I got better. It was a longer journey than that, but eventually it got better, and then I thought, man, I've got to learn this stuff, I want to use this with my clients. And so, learned from him, mentored from him, did some other stuff and courses, and I read a lot and stuff, and then just started implementing blood work with my clients at the gym. And so I sort of said, like, any client that comes on, does a 12-week, personal training program, we'll do your blood work as well. And that was sort of my apprenticeship, right? So, we're just sort of doing 3 to 5 new clients coming in a week, doing their sign up for PT, and I'm just, doing their blood work and just, and they're doing the PT anyway, right? So they used to get the blood work as a nice little bonus. And so I was just doing, bloods after bloods after bloods. And then, when the lockdowns happened and then eventually sold and move on from the gym, I'm like, sort of what I'm going to do now. Had some time off for a bit and then thought, I want to really focus on this health coaching, blood work stuff. And so just moved into doing that full-time online. Yeah, and that was how I got into it.
That's awesome. I want to, dig further into the training stuff because at that time, that was before Ben Patrick and stuff really blew up on TikTok, and you were doing the same sort of stuff, which is now super common, but back then you would have been, had a really good niche.
Yeah.
Where did you find that style of training? I know you trained under the same guy that he did.
Yeah. So my mentor when I first got into strength coaching was Charles Poliquin, and that's who Ben. He was mentor to Ben Patrick as well, and also. I think Keegan Smith, who has worked with Ben Patrick and those guys. But so I was like 20 years old and got saved up to fly to Queensland, do courses with Poliquin, and obviously then transferred that over to the way we did our PT and stuff. And he was a big impact on my early influence of training and nutrition, and certainly learned a whole bunch from him. And especially when it comes to training athletes and stuff, he definitely had some amazing ideas and philosophies. So that was pretty cool.
How did you come across him? Because I've through COVID lockdowns had nothing better to do. I was on TikTok, and that's where my algorithm led. Obviously, that when you were 20, that wasn't around. How did you find Charles Poliquin?
Just reading articles online. So back then, I got into training, when I was 16. So I was at 2005, and just reading articles online. And he, I got onto a website, and he was writing these articles, and they just seemed like he just seemed to be ahead of the curve on other people. And so read read more and more, and then a few years later, he's coming to Australia to do some seminars and courses. So I thought, I've got to do that, and I was going to going to uni at the time for exercise sports science, and the stuff I was learning in the degree wasn't really super practical for what I wanted to do. It was pretty bare bones basic, and so I realized, hey, if I wanted to sort of be good at what I do, I had to find other people, and so I started to go on his seminars, and it was just through online articles, man. Yeah.
Were you always looking, was that a trait you always had, like even growing up, like looking outside the box to learn stuff? Because I feel like a lot of personal trainers be like, do the Cert 4, work at a gym, train, and it's the same, like similar stuff.
Yeah, it was just, I was just crazy passionate about it early on days. Like I was playing basketball and tennis, and I wasn't very athletically, I suppose, gifted, like strength-wise, right? And I thought, man, I was obviously tall for basketball, and I need to get stronger and stuff. And so I just started reading, man, and I always had a good, really good memory. So, and I could read pretty quick, so I would just read articles just continuously. And I was so, into training, like between the ages of 16 and 20, like trying to train and get jacked was like my life, right? Like that's what I was most into. And so, I just read heaps of articles and try and learn what I can, and figure out what's legit and what's not, and what I should use and what I shouldn't.
Yeah. Interesting, what you should use and what not.
Because there's plenty you can read. You can read a lot, but if you don't know what's bullshit and what's actually useful, well, then you can know a whole lot of stuff, but half of it might not be good. So it's trying to figure out, what's the good stuff you can use. And that's the same now, right? Like in health social media, because that's where a lot of people get their information now, right? Is social media. And it's trying to fit, like you can hear stuff and it sounds really good, but it might not be that great, or especially with social media, because it's all made for clicks and engagement. And so you only get like half the message to get the attention. Whereas it's really, if you try and give like nuance and shades of gray on social media, you don't get engagement. And so, people are always, even if they know their shit, they're always trying to really simplify it, which is good in a way. But if you overdo it, you're watching it and you're getting this super simplified message that's black and white, and that's not how it really is.
Yeah. What are some like big learnings you had? Obviously for you it was a lot of trial and error because you're the one doing the learning.
Yeah.
What's some big takeaways that you had in your training at that time?
Like for training stuff?
Yeah.
Early on, it's changed. Even, what I do think is best now is sort of changed, like learning from the Charles Poliquin and stuff, that was heavily based on training athletes. And so, early days I was like, okay, you have to squat and you have to deadlift, otherwise you're a pussy, basically. Whereas nowadays, like training gen, but now I'm a personal trainer training mostly gen, like I trained you as an athlete and other athletes, footy players, but probably 60% are gen pop, right? And so, quickly learned that they don't have to squat, right? Like if if they want to get stronger and healthier and they don't enjoy a squat, well then a leg press is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sort of had to, and you learn and change, right? Like I had this hard stance that the squat is, ultimate, and deadlift is the ultimate, where it's fine. You don't need to at all. If you don't enjoy it, like for the average person, you got to enjoy training, and, they're going to be able to get healthy and also not train in pain. So for some people, those exercises aren't going to be best, right? And what else changed? I used to think, machines were crap, like, leg extension, arm machines, all that stuff. Whereas now, the research, especially if you just want to get bigger, like if you want to grow muscle, machines are fine. Machines are great, right? And if you've got certain injuries, well, then machines can be great. So they're things that I've, a couple of things that I've definitely flipped on. In my gym, I didn't have a machine early days, right? And we had a few, like you had leg press and cable machines and stuff. But, if I was going to redo a gym now, well, I'll definitely have more machines because that can be really useful.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess a big takeaway would be like, be more flexible, less rigid. Because otherwise you got to cut off a lot of, like Gen Pop customers or clients, I should say.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time they just want someone to keep them accountable, not tell them to do what's best.
Yeah. And sometimes even like I said, if they don't enjoy it, well, then they're not going to keep doing it. And then they're worse off than if they, kept doing it with something different, right? So, and some people machines are going to be superior if they've got, crappy mobility or, bad knees or, they've got bone on bone in their knees. Well, then, squats ain't going to be good for them. So, yeah.
Cool. I guess let's turn to, your journey, like your gut issues and stuff like that, because I've watched it from the content you've put out.
Yeah.
But for those who haven't seen it, what does that look like? How did that start for you and led you down that journey to?
Yeah. So it probably started in how old was I? Like 20. I was like in 2011, I got chronic fatigue, right? And I was trying to get lean. So the first time I got super lean, like just trying to get, shredded 6-pack or whatever. And I just couldn't, I was, training really hard, dieting really hard. I was probably, under eating and overtraining. But the fat wasn't really coming off. And so I just kept stepping it up, like cut the calories more, increase the training more. And then eventually I got really lean, but I lost a lot of muscle. I was pretty skinny. And eventually ended up with this chronic fatigue. Like I was in bed like 14 hours a day, or, just absolutely knackered. Had to stop training, barely scraped. I was at uni at the time, so I was just like scraping through to pass uni, quit my part-time job, and that lasted for about a year. I had this chronic fatigue. And so doing research, I was, consulting doctors here online and overseas and trying to figure it out, and eventually got the hint idea that it might be mercury. And I got mercury, mercury can cause some of these symptoms. So I went to my local doc, said, can you test me for mercury? And he's kind of like, well, that's pointless, but whatever, we'll do it. And, came back sky high. And, it's meant to be under 16. It was like 108 or something, 104.
Damn.
And
so were you eating heaps of tuna at the time, or
nah? So it was from, I figured out what it was from. So when I was a kid, there was a kid up the road, and would muck around and cause trouble, whatever, as 10 or 12-year-olds. And his dad was a alloys scientist, right? So he designed metal alloys, and he had vials of pure mercury in his garage. And so we used to get those out and play with it on our skin and stuff, roll it around because it's really dense and it feels cool in your hands. But it absorbs through your skin, and it releases a vapor that you breathe in. And so I absorbed that. It got stored in my fat, chubby kid, try and get shredded for the first time. The fat goes into your blood as you're losing fat, and then the mercury can circulate. And so that's why it was so hard to lose fat, because I had this mercury in my body's like, that doesn't want to comply, right? And then when you force it to, the mercury, is getting released, and then it end up, plus the overtraining and the over dieting, but combined with the mercury, that's what sort of caused the chronic fatigue. So that was sort of, got over that, but I think that set the stage for like later on when I had gut issues. And because what fixed the chronic fatigue was, and having, got around to infrared sauna, and that was like, so that can release, heavy metals, right? You get them out through your sweat. So found an infrared sauna nearby, paid them, whatever, can I use your infrared sauna? Yep. And first one, I'm like, all right, well, I'm here, I paid for it, so I'll just jump in. I've got an hour, so I'm going to jump in for an hour. And didn't know at the time that if you're detoxing things like heavy metals, you got to start slow and build up. And so did the infrared sauna for an hour, came out, and then later that day I'm just like, oh, I got this pain in my gut, like what's going on? And it went on for a couple of days, got worse, and then turned out it was appendicitis. And so, just dumping that many toxins into my system at once, obviously called a blockage or an infection in my appendix. And that was the whole thing. Like it burst, and I was in hospital for like 10 or 11 days. And so that created like the groundwork for having gut issues later on, I think. That whole saga. Yeah. And then 2017, I was, busy with the gym. I was pushing really hard, and, I was sort of, sort of work hard, play hard, right? So I'm trying to run this business, trying to grow it, training really hard. I was like trying to put on muscle. So I'm eating like 4,500 calories a day. I'm probably stressed with work, and then I'm going out and drinking on the weekends and not sleeping enough. And then that's when all the gut issues, came to a head, and I was just like, started reacting to foods, covered in eczema. Energy's really bad, memory's really bad. I'm like, what is going on? And then, sort of that figured out, okay, I've got to get some help here, and found the guy who was my original mentor in Bloods, is a guy, Dave O'Brien. And he, gave me a protocol, said you got leaky gut, really bad leaky gut, you got these bacterial overgrowths. And that's what's causing these gut issues, yeah. And that was it. And then obviously went through the protocol, improved, had some steps back, some steps forward, things I wasn't doing right. Was still wanting to get pissed on the weekends and party, so that sent me backwards a bit. So a lot of learning there, and you ended up having a microbiome or fecal transplant as well. So basically I had, after 2 years, I still had issues, and basically they take a donor stool, basically someone else's poop, and give you a colonoscopy, put you to sleep, and give you a new microbiome, right? So use their bacteria and then give it to you. So yeah, did that, and then did some more stuff, and had to do some more work on leaky gut, and eventually got better, yeah.
Did you find any side effects to the transplant? Like, because I've seen that there's been, was it like on Netflix or something? The couple did it.
Oh, right.
And so the boyfriend had poor mental health.
Yep.
And the woman had like the gut problems and acne and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then, so she ended up developing like his symptoms
Of
from
mental
what his
health.
gut. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like they're very rigorous, thankfully, with who they take donors from. So you don't want to have a donor with someone with health problems, right?
Yeah.
So they do really rigorous screening, and they only take people under 25 for the donors. They do a mental assessment on them, so even if their bloods and stool are good, they do a mental assessment on them. If they don't pass the mental assessment, they can't be a donor. So that's like if you're, that they get, and that's why it's expensive because they're going to get these poop from these healthy people. And like my stuff, I mean, I felt amazing after I first got it done. Like, I felt so much better. Like I could eat foods again. My brain was clear. Like, I come back to the gym after I had it done and I'm like, oh man, what's going on with the speaker? The music we play for the gym sessions. I'm like, it sounds like it's been broken or something. Like it just sounds so much better. Like someone changed a setting or something. And I just sound so clear and crisp. And I realized that my hearing had been affected before I had the transplant.
Yeah.
And the music just sounded shit. And then it sounded normal again, but I just thought the speaker had changed because I didn't know,
Yeah.
But then this is why I don't really recommend fecal transplants to 99% of people, is because after a couple of months, my symptoms started going backwards again. And that was because I still had bad leaky gut, right? So gut lining damage. So you put the new bacteria in, which is great if you've got bacterial overgrowth. They give you antibiotics to kill it off before you go in. New bacteria in from someone else. And your gut bacteria are good, but if your gut lining is still compromised, right, the internal terrain is not healthy, well then that's a good environment for bad bacteria and other stuff to come back in. So I lasted a few months and then started regressing again. And then I was like, okay, well there's more to this. And then eventually just had to do more work on the leaky gut side of things or gut lining damage to fully get better. Yeah.
What was your mental health like at that point? Because that would be super tiresome, like 2-3 years of
Yeah.
trying to work to get your body right. How's your mind after that?
There was definitely some lower moments there. I mean, I was still better than when I was at the worst of it. Like when I was at the worst of it, I didn't know what was going on. Or when I was doing the antimicrobials, like that's the worst, is like when you're taking antimicrobials to kill off the bacteria, that can really mess you up. Like it's just because they're releasing all these toxins in your system and you feel pretty messed up. And you just no energy. I was like fasting every day until almost dinner time because I just felt so terrible when I ate. So I just just put off eating till like 4 o'clock because I needed to work. And run this business. And as soon as I ate, I was just stuffed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it was back and forth for a long time. But I just sort of knew. I don't know. I was sort of pretty positive and optimistic person. So I'm just like, I'm going to figure this out. Like, I knew like the experience I had with the chronic fatigue, like that was messed up for a while. But I just sort of knew like, I was just that I'm going to figure this out. So it wasn't really like, oh, I'm stuffed.
It's cool that you can have the positive mindset, learn from it, and then also implement that into your work to help other people as well. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, that was sort of what I did with the training, right? Like I was, like sort of really skinny, fat sort of kid. And like I got in shape. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to, learn and obviously get into the training, nutrition. And then, yeah, that was sort of like, all right, now this is the new game to play, right? Like this is like my biggest deficiency now is this health, the gut health side of things. Like I thought what my idea with health was like, okay, I eat healthy, I train hard, and, I'm lean, so I'm healthy. But little did I know that, too much stress, too much training, and even if you're lean, going out and getting pissed on the weekend and running yourself down, that's actually going to lead to poor health, regardless of how you look, right? So, that was like the new game for me to learn was this blood side of things, yeah.
I'm trying to.
That's right.
Yeah, I guess we'll fast forward a bit then. So like
Yeah.
gut protocols and that. What's been like the biggest, I would say like breakthrough or something you've had like a success story you've had with a client? Do you think?
Well, now in the last few years, I mean, and that's why I like the bloods is because, you can have such a positive impact on someone's life, right? Like, doing the training and stuff is amazing too. Like if someone's really overweight or really out of shape and you get them in shape, like that's amazing. That's life-changing. But I think it's more, when you're in that state of being unwell, like, because I've been, in average shape and I've been unwell and I wanted 1,000 times more to be better when I was unwell than when I was out of shape, right? Like when you can't function and you can't think properly, and you got these, you can't get out of bed or whatever, if you can get them just a normal life again, that's really impactful. So I've had a number of clients that, like guys that are, say ulcerative colitis, shitting blood literally 10 times a day, get them back, they can't be away from a toilet, driving the car, like you get, they need to go within a minute, and so they literally are scared to leave the house.
Yeah.
And, get them better from that, or, people with similar to me, they've got like some chronic fatigue sort of stuff, severe gut issues, severe skin issues, just that kind of stuff. It's really, has a massive impact on your daily life. If you can obviously help them get better. They're putting in the work, right? I'm just guiding them, obviously. But that's huge. And there's, I don't know, there's always, every month there's sort of something like that, which is why I love doing it.
A big one that like I'm interested in is like, obviously I live with Barty.
Yeah.
And you worked with her, and she also speaks about how much it helped with endometriosis, which is super common now.
It is. Yeah.
How many women do you work with that? Because like in society, it's huge. It's way more common than it should be.
Yeah. So it's like about 10% of women have endo now, right? So it's pretty common. It can be pretty debilitating. Like, I've had some, like I have some of the clients I've had with it. I didn't even know it was possible for the symptoms to get that bad. Like one lady was like, 2 weeks out of the month, it was just debilitating pain, not just 4 or 5 days, but 2 to 3 weeks out of the month, so much blood, it would flood the bathroom floor, like would pass out on the bathroom floor in pain, like just crazy shit. What was the question?
I was just
endo. How often do I see people with it? Sorry, that was it. Yeah. How often do I see people with it? So, I would say probably, one client at least every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, with endo, yeah. Like, I see quite a few female clients with endo and PCOS. Like, PCOS is sort of, similarly hormone related, but different. But, endo, 10% of women have PCOS and 10% of women have endo. So, some have both, but you've got about 15, nearly 1 in 5 women that have one of those things, right? So it's, in sort of childbearing age. So it's pretty full on, yeah.
Yeah. Other than seeing you, for women that are watching or listening to this, what's like, I guess, a tip or tool or something that they can like implement to help them with that if they are suffering from it?
So have you got, so endo and PCOS, they're a bit different, but I'll start with endo, but, it's driven by inflammation, right? So it's, there's like a new sort of hypothesis for it. It's called the bacterial contamination hypothesis, which just means that it's bacterial overgrowth can be a driver of it. But the best thing you can do is just, lead a low inflammatory lifestyle, right? So, cut out, just improve those health basics. That's the biggest thing, right? Low inflammatory food, remove processed junk, remove your seed oils, remove foods that you might be intolerant to and inflammatory like gluten, soy, dairy for some people. Dairy's not bad, but some people, if their gut's compromised, don't do well with it. People can be like, well, duh, but sleep your 7 to 8 hours a night, get sunlight, do lots of exercise, do things you enjoy, all that stuff, right? That's going to be the basics, and that's the basics for everyone anyway. And then, there's very often, inflammatory issues driving it. So it could be like I said, like leaky gut and bacterial overgrowth, right? So if you have those, that's going to need something more targeted. But even if you have those things, the previous things I said are what you want to start with anyway.
Yeah, like live a holistic life.
Yeah.
Eat whole foods, get some ground, sun, water, sleep, don't drink, don't poison yourself.
Yeah. And if that, that's going to make you feel better no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And then, some people might need a bit more, specialized work on top of that, but that goes a long way.
That's when they can see you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Try the other stuff first.
Yeah, get the other
stuff
still
first.
Bad, then that's right.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's switch gears a bit.
Yeah.
So how we like reconnected again was my friend was sharing me stuff that you were posting about COVID.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, which was a wild time. And like you said, your business suffered from being locked down, and a lot of others did. Tell me how you found interest in that, and what made you start posting the things you did about it.
Yeah, well, when we're leading up to it, like the gym, like obviously it came out of, it was on the news and stuff in early 2020, January, February. And then, come to Australia, they're counting the cases, all this stuff. And they said, we might have to lock down businesses. And I was saying to my staff, like, all right, they might do a lockdown here, but it'll be max 3 weeks. Like there is no way they can close down all these businesses for longer than that. Like it just would crash the economy. Like I just can't see it happening. Obviously that was completely wrong. And then, so I'm off work. Well, we're scrambling, like, what are we going to do? The gym's closed. I've got no income. My staff have got no income. eventually, you know, there was government stuff like job seeker and stuff like that. But at the start, like, what are you doing? So we're scrambling, like, all right, we'll rent out. People wanted to train at home. So, you know, we'll get all our bars and plates and do packages and rent them out. You know, so we go, you know, your bar, plates, some dumbbells, kettlebells, and, you know, rent them out for $100 a week or something, and, you know, try and get some cash flow coming in. But then after that, I had all this time at home, and I'm like, you know, looking into it. I'm just reading the studies, right? Like, I love, you know, doing blood work. You know, people ask me, how do you get good at blood work? You know, what course or whatever. I'm like, you just got to read studies, man. Like, you just, that's where the knowledge is. And so I'm reading studies on COVID. You know, it was big in Italy and in Spain in early 2020, like in March, April and May.
Really popped off in Italy.
Yeah, blew up in Italy and Spain. And I'm reading the studies, and I'm like, because eventually when it first came out, World Health Organization said it has a fatality rate of like 2 or 3%. So that means, you know, 1 out of 50 people is going to die, right? Which is crazy, right? That's really bad, you know. And then studies started coming out in Spain, and they did, like, they were doing tests to see people's antibodies, right? And that gives you a true indication of how many people have been exposed to it, because lots of people get exposed to it very asymptomatic, they don't know. And so that would put the infection fatality rate at like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000, right? That's like 0.1%. You know, that's getting pretty similar to flu, a little bit worse than flu, and then I was like, all right, well, the chief health officers of each country surely they're reading this shit, right? Like, that's their job. They're going to keep up with what's going on, how the virus is developing, and then base their policy off the latest research that's coming out. I'm like, well, there's no way lockdown's going to keep going on, because this data from Spain, you know, they came out in May, 2020 in Spain in May. Yep. Study come out, it was like, you know, a death rate of like 0.1%. And then on the TV, the World Health Organization, or, you know, the news is saying, you know, 1, 2, 3%. You know, that's a massive difference. And surely they won't lock down with that low, you know, infection fatality rate. And they kept locked down, kept saying how deadly it was. And I'm like, and then the mask came. And then it was about that time, you know, and there's plenty of studies on masks, you know, over like, we've studied masks, you know, for 100 years, right? For flu outbreaks and all that stuff, and those surgical shitty masks, you know, we know they don't do much.
Yeah, the particles were like so much smaller than the gaps in it.
Yeah. And so then I was like, holy shit, this isn't, like, they know, like not the politicians, but, you know, people who have read research, or, you know, chief medical officers should know that these don't work. And then, you know, in America, they you know, took them, they said, no, they don't work. And they said, no, now it's mandatory. I'm like, this is like a psychological thing. This is to like make people scared of the virus, make it, you see it everywhere in the street. I'm like, that's like a psychological play. That is not a virus protection play. And then I was like, holy fuck, like, this is like crazy. And then just kept going, you know, more and more into it, obviously. And then, you know, the lockdowns kept going. And then obviously in, you know, 2021, obviously, then the vaccine came and everything that came with that, and the mandates. And, you know, already before this whole thing started, I had a bit of a distrust of government, and then this just took it to the next level. And, you know, so, so just started posting stuff and just trying to help people. You know, I was just posting stories on Instagram, just trying to help people make sense of it all. And obviously just putting my perspective, which was very different to what they were seeing in the media. But then, because there was sort of two, there was like the media perspective of mask up, stay safe, or there was the sort of seeing crazy perspective. Oh, it's you know, the 5G towers and this and that. And there was no one in the middle, like, breaking it down, or that I saw breaking it down and actually explaining it, like, about the mask studies or about the infection fatality rate studies, and making it digestible to make people realize, yes, this is bullshit. Lockdowns are bullshit. The vaccine's bullshit. Mandates are, and trying to help people understand it. So I was just like, well, I had all this time, I'm not working. So I just started doing that. Yeah.
How did you go with backlash or feedback or anything like that? Because it was super divisive, and it was like, if you're not on our team, you're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I had a few, especially on Facebook, because I was posting on Facebook back then too. And yeah, there was definitely, you know, comments like, you know, a couple of nurses like jumped out at me and had a go, but I was like, you know, sort of whatever. A lot of support too. People like, fuck yeah, like, you know, like, you're actually, you know, explaining your position and backing it up, like, that's awesome. So yeah, so it was a bit, but it wasn't crazy. I mean, it's not like it blew up and went viral or anything, right? So it was a pretty small audience, so I didn't have a chance to really get any backlash.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I was pretty vocal as well. I didn't read any study. Like, I read some stuff, but it was just like, can you not, like, you'd have to be pretty thick to see that this is wrong, right?
That's right. And when you got further into it, that's right. Like, you didn't need to read studies. Like, you could see there was, you know, some bullshit happening, right?
It was just things that didn't add up, or you know, they were showing footage of hospitals in Italy and saying it was in Australia and that sort of stuff, like repackaging old footage, and you're like, what if they're lying about this? What else are they lying about? Like, shut up and get it. Like,
yeah. So it was just all this psychological manipulation, right? So if it's that dangerous, well then people would want to get it. But obviously you have to force people to get it. Well then that says everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I guess going on about that, you know, that was one part of it, is saying how silly the COVID stuff and the lockdown policies were. And then, you know, the next thing from that was the vaccine policies.
Yeah.
And do you want to go into that one a bit as well, and how you've obviously researched the vaccines too, because, you know, you think one thing there, all right, let's look into the next thing they're telling us to do. Yeah. What was that process like for you?
So I think at first, the first one was the AstraZeneca one. And at first I was looking at, you know, because they you know, we knew these were coming for a long time, right? As soon as it happened in 2020, they start planning it, the you know, the quick trials they're going to do and stuff. And then
warp speed.
Yeah, warp speed, yeah. And obviously the new technology too, like that was an instant red flag. And, you know, at first they weren't even going to have so at first, you know, in a study you have a placebo group, right? That gets a saline injection and compare it to that. And at first there wasn't going to be one. And I'm like, all right, instant, done. Like no placebo group, like not touching it.
Yeah.
And then eventually the Pfizer one, they did have a placebo group because everyone was like, well, this, you know, is bullshit.
Yeah.
And just like the, you know, because it was, when did it come out? Because the mandates didn't hit here until like September, October 21. So it was a fair while. 18th. Yeah, you know very well. Yeah. And I was just like, well, you know, but even before I knew more about the vaccine, I was like, well, you know, the danger of dying from this as a 33-year-old, wherever I was back then, is so low. There's no way I'm getting, you know, the mRNA tech into me, right? But then, you know, research like the lipid nanoparticles that carry it, like, you know, they've tested this in animals before, you know, it didn't go well, all that sort of stuff. It just seemed like a bad idea. And, you know, as soon as there was, you know, the mandates come out, I was like, holy shit, no, this is fucked. And then, you know, the government bought, you know, 10 doses per person, right? Like we got a country of 25 million, we bought like 250 million or something, right? And I'm just like, this is insane. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I was lucky that I didn't, you know, need it to work, because I had sold my gym. I wasn't even working at that point. But, you know, I was sort of saying to my friends, like, guys, avoid this if you can. And everyone, because before the mandates, people were like, yeah, I'm not getting that. Like, you know, my mates were like, no, stuff that. Yeah. And obviously when the mandates come out, you either work or you get it. You know, most of them got it. Yeah. And don't blame them, because we didn't know how bad it was at that point either. Yeah. Like I had I thought this could potentially be bad, but it turned out to be so much worse than I thought. You know, like I thought, you know, this has got the chance to, you know, there's a good possibility this is going to cause some problems, but, you know, we didn't know. And then as the data started coming out, it was like, holy shit, like. Yeah.
It's funny. At the start, it was just like, it's not necessary. What's the point in getting it? Yeah. And then it turns into the myocarditis, pericarditis, all that, any other stuff what's coming with it. Now it's like, well, looking back, you're like, yeah, they really fucked up there. But,
And the biggest one was the VAERS data. So it's the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System in the US, and that's been up for years. You know, people report events, reactions from vaccines, and it came out. You know, I think it came out in the US. It became available, you know, in like January or February 21, and you know, I'm on this site, you know, every second day, and there's just deaths being reported, and you know, back in 1976, there was a swine flu vaccine, and about 50 people died in a number of months, and they pulled it from the market. And so I'm like, this thing's going to get pulled so quickly. Like we're already at 100, 150 deaths in a month or whatever. I think it might have been more. I can't remember the number. It might have been 500 deaths in a month. I don't know. It was crazy. Yeah. Like this is going to get pulled. And it never got pulled. And I was just like, what the fuck? How is this possible? Like we're, you know, racking up thousands and thousands of deaths that are reported, you know, within a couple of days of getting this thing. And it's not, no one's talking about it. It's not getting pulled. Obviously there were people online, social media talking about it, but in the media, it was just like the same message of you got to get it.
Yeah, they were talking about boosters instead.
yeah, it was crazy. I just couldn't believe. I'm like, how is, you know, and how, I don't know. I didn't realize, like, how are not more doctors are not seeing this? It's just like, surely this is going to get pulled. And every month went by, it's still been pumped out. And then the mandates, I'm like this is a big, I don't know, this is a big agenda because no one actually gives a shit about what's actually happening on the other side.
And that's where it opens up the you know, the conversation around conspiracies and all that sort of thing. Because it was like, all this evidence points to not the best idea. Yeah. No good. And then even I had so many friends that had adverse reactions.
Yes, I mean, I see them all the time now, right? Heart issues, all kinds of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, like I had mates like super fit, like league best and fairest footy. Heart, like myocarditis or pericarditis, I can't remember which one.
Yeah,
Either way, heart
way.
inflammation that hospitalized him. Super fit dude,
Yeah.
24, peak of his powers. Shouldn't happen. And at the time, I was 24. No one should be going through that, no matter how unhealthy your lifestyle is at the time. Well, not no matter, but you know what I mean?
For sure.
Shouldn't be happening. And then it's like, you need it to work, you need it to do this, you can't do that. And then it's like, boosters going to be every 6 months. Oh, actually, no, 3 months. Oh, it's not effective after this long. It's like, why does the science keep changing as well? Then it makes you question it, which causes more divisiveness, more fights between friends, families, workplaces, because you tell people one thing and then it changes. And people already have one opinion, but none of it gets talked about. And then scientists or doctors do talk about it, or celebrities get silenced, deplatformed, called this or that. Like, Pete Evans was the big one at the start. Like, 2020 just disappeared.
That's right. And that's a big red flag, right? If people who are voicing the other side of the argument are getting censored. Yeah. That's another, and that was the big thing that got me going in 2020 as well, was the censorship. The fact checkers, but the censorship of hydroxychloroquine and then eventually ivermectin. Yeah. And the big thing, like I said to people, I wrote a 3,000. I didn't end up posting it because I just was like, but like a 3,000 word thing on hydroxychloroquine at the time. But the funny, it started off as like, Trump was taking it, and then like, he's just doing his own. He's gone rogue, doing his own thing. Yeah. He's an idiot, blah blah blah. And I'm like, people think like that Trump is going on Google, finding like, hydroxychloroquine sounds good, I'm going to take that. Like, he's the commander in chief of the United States. Like, forget he's Trump. Like, he's the president. Yeah. There's a whole agency called the Secret Service that is dedicated to protecting his life. Do you really think that he's going to take something that is dangerous? There's only one reason he's taking it, because at the time it was going around the White House with staff, and he's taking hydroxychloroquine. Old people are vulnerable. He's old. There's only one reason he's taking it, is because it's the best thing that's available. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? He's not advising himself. There's a doctor advising him. And then on the TV, they're saying, idiot Trump taking this stuff, and then obviously he got banned. And then in Australia, like in Queensland, because doctors can prescribe it. It's just like
$2 or something on PBS.
Yeah, it's just a malarial medication, right? Yeah. It's very safe. People take it with MS and lupus, like autoimmune diseases. People take it daily for 10 years. You can take it during pregnancy. I mean, only the safest drugs are allowed to be taken during pregnancy. And you're taking it the same dose for COVID for 5 days, right? And then in Queensland, doctors could be sent to jail for prescribing it, and no one just like, wow, like, that's crazy. So that was the whole thing. And then the same thing, once ivermectin came out or was known to be, help, same thing happened to that. You couldn't, at first, I saw a doctor about getting some for like, just have on hand for like my grandparents or something. And he's like, oh, no, I don't really want, yeah, I could prescribe it, but like, I'm not going to do that. And then a month or a week later, TGA bans it, and then doctors aren't allowed to prescribe it. Yeah. So like, if a doctor wants to prescribe something off label, they should. That's always the case, is they can. Yeah. But then when you ban it, like, what's going on, right? That's simple, right? Is that when the vaccines came out, they had an emergency use authorization. And so because they weren't properly approved yet, it was considered an emergency. And so, they haven't gone through the full clinical trials yet, but we're going to approve them because it's so important that we get them out quickly. You can't have this emergency use authorization if there is a current drug that is effective for treating the disease. And so if the hydroxychloroquine or the ivermectin are shown to be, good at treating it, then you can't have an emergency. You can't use a new drug that is not fully approved. You have to use the old drugs that are approved and safe. And so they had to make them, be seen as dangerous and not effective, because otherwise the vaccines, which have had, Pfizer and Moderna have invested, all this money to the biggest profit-making thing ever, they're going to be on the shelf. So, that's sort of how that, came about. I mean, there's more to it, but that's the basic, the Cliff Notes version. Yeah. Yeah, such an interesting topic, because it's a big part of our lives, or like everyone's life, really. Yeah. But even seeing, and then all the stuff coming out about Pfizer's fines in the past, and Johnson & Johnson, and how they, how they acted, and it's like, well, I probably wouldn't be trusting them with my life. Like, no, that's it. Yeah. I mean, they're habitually, criminal company. They basically fines are the cost of doing business, right? So, they're obviously going to find a way to do things that are better for them. And then if you get caught, you pay the fine, and then that's often the profit is usually better than the fine. So you pay the fine and move on. So they're found of criminal findings all the time for negligence or lying in their marketing or whatever, doing all this kind of stuff, making having dangerous products out when they know about it.
Yeah, it was like asbestos in baby powder or something.
Yeah,
like
Johnson
that.
Johnson had that. Yeah. So all those big pharma companies have done things like that, and then that's just how business is done. They if they get caught, they pay the fine, and that's that.
Yeah.
And of course, with the vaccines, there's no liability, right? That was the thing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, right? Is there's no liability. So, that would be the biggest. If it was actually run properly, the biggest fine of all. But without liability, they're not going to get. Government. That was part of the contract when Australia bought vaccines from Pfizer. Part of the contract deal was no liability. Back to Pfizer. You can't sue them, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's actually insane to think that happened.
It's crazy now because you sort of forget. Like at the time, it was just like, it's kind of like there's no way these it just seems so crazy. Like, all right, you're gonna not be able to work if you don't get a vaccine. Like that'll never happen.
Yeah.
And then the next week it happened. I'm like, oh, well, here we are.
I remember telling my mates, I'm like, I'll see you on Monday. I'll be there. And then I didn't have a job.
Yeah. That's right. It's like, what the fuck? Like, this is actually legit.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're gonna be gone. And I was like, I'll be here Monday. Like, there's no way that's actually gonna happen. And then yeah.
And what else is it? And then showing your papers and the stuff to work. Like I was, when we went back to work, when the gym was allowed to open again, they had checkpoints all around with police, and you had to be an approved worker or whatever. And I remember driving on Peninsula Link and
the Ring of Steel or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was that. And there was a cop stop there, and they're like, oh, what are you doing for work or whatever? Oh no, that's right. We're allowed to train people outside. As a PT, we're allowed to train people inside. So I moved half the equipment into the car park of our gym, and we're training people outside. And asked, what are you doing? What's your reason for being out? And I'm just like, this is like Gestapo shit. Right?
Yeah. And what's the difference between being outside and working when they said it was safe to be 1.5 vaccinated?
Yeah, all that stuff, man. Yeah. It was crazy times.
Yeah. I don't know. Grateful it happened because I learned a lot of great things fell into place looking back now.
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah, me too. I mean, I loved that period of having the gym, and it was a great community, but it's not what I would want to be doing now. I love, obviously seeing people for these health related stuff online. I've also got a kid now, so working from home is great. Like the PT life of, working at sessions 6 till, 10 or 11, and then 4 till 8 p.m. It's pretty rough. I don't know, it just seemed normal to me because I did it for 10 years. But it's definitely not what I'd want to do now as a work schedule. So, it worked out great. At the time, it seemed like the end of the world, being closed for so long. But then, managed to move on and do something different, and which actually, I think is, I enjoy more. Obviously it was crazy, but then has a positive as well. And the biggest thing is I think it's awakened people to more of this health space, right? Like the health space has grown so much, and because people looked and saw what happened, and they're like, well, the government doesn't give a shit about health, so I have to take health into my own hands. And so it's been a big push for the alternative health space and people taking health into their own hands rather than relying on an agency or the government to look after them.
Yeah, I love it. It's so funny, pushing people into the alternative health space, which is taking health into your own hands.
Yeah.
Not trusting your GP and just deciding to eat better and exercise more.
Yeah. So just the basics, man. So, that's it. So, I think there's a lot of positives, with it as well, and things that are happening now, which are hopefully good, in the US with things like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being the health, head of Health and Human Services, and hopefully a whole workover of the FDA and CDC. And obviously that's America. People think, well, who gives a shit about America? But CDC sort of set the standard for many of the things that we do here. A lot of recommendations for drugs and the childhood, vaccine schedule, and all that things. If recommended change there, well, that can lead to
we usually follow suit.
Yeah, for a lot of things. Not everything. Some things we have our own. For example, in America, and they still recommend, they did and still recommend the COVID jabs to kids, and we never did that here. Young kids, I think we might have done it from 6-year-old and up or something. But America still do that crazily enough. For 3 months old, 6 months old.
Yeah, right.
So there's some differences there, but yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even know that that was still being pushed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because it has entered, I think, people's just everyday thought pattern now. Like I still will see people posting, like, "Oh yeah, I've got COVID." It's like it's just cold or a flu. Like, well, it sucks that that's a part of like everyday language.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah. Still going. I mean, I don't want to like the COVID is, you don't want to get it over and over again because it does cause. It's not like the symptoms are just a cold, but it does have the way. It was designed because it was designed in a lab. The spike protein is extremely damaging to our physiology, and unfortunately, we're getting it. Like I'm probably getting, like it's mild and it's no problem, but getting it, twice a year, and so.
Oh, you're getting it. Like,
well, I think so. Like you get a cold or something.
true.
You're
not going to test.
not testing, but I'm probably I mean we're all probably still getting exposed to it, right? It's so mild now, but you're getting exposed to the spike protein. Which is what made the jabs bad as well, right? The spike protein, like that's the most damaging part of it. That was the other crazy thing about the jabs is, if you're gonna make a vaccination for it, you get the body to make on repeat the most dangerous part of the whole virus. So you got this whole virus, and you're going to tell your body to make this spike protein, which is just like, this damaging protein your body's just pumping out on repeat, right? So that was nuts. But yeah, when you get it, you're getting exposed to the same thing, so it's not good. But but it's I don't know, it's just around now, isn't it? So that's just what it is.
Yeah, something we've got to continue to live with. Until the next one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't come in 2030. But yeah, off what you said about vaccines in kids and stuff like that. Obviously, you've just had a kid.
Yeah,
and we're chatting about it before. I'd love to go into that and your opinions on it all. Like, I think 2020, like you said, opened a lot of people's eyes, made a lot of people think. Like, I never had a thought about vaccines at all. Funnily enough, I didn't get many as a kid or in high school like most people did. For some reason, my name was never called out. Really weird. But now I'm like, grateful just because opinions change and you learn things and that sort of thing. But as someone who's just had a kid, how does that look for you? I guess I want to start on that. Did you start learning about that more when you knew that you were going to have a kid, or was that?
Yeah. So when I started in 2020, like I said, when the lockdowns happened, I started looking into it more because I thought we're going to have a kid soon and had all this time off. And so I started learning about it. And obviously the COVID jab came out, so that made me more interested in other vaccines. Because prior to that, I had no idea. Like I've been in sort of the alternative sort of health. I'm like, I know people that are like, say, these are shit and you shouldn't do them. And obviously the other side is that like these diseases are dangerous and, you're an idiot if you don't do it. And I had no idea. And so I started looking into it. And then I suppose the gateway drug to childhood vaccinations is probably learning about, I don't want to say people what to do, right? Because you got to make that decision for yourself. But, the gateway drug, I guess, is, learning about the hepatitis B vaccine. And so that's the one that's given on day one, right? So you get that, the kid's born in the hospital, 10 minutes after they come out, hepatitis B. And so that is a blood-borne disease. So you get it from having sex with an infected person or sharing needles, right? So why does a newborn need that? Well, they say, there's hepatitis B mothers, that they transmit it to the kid. Well, most mothers know they're not hepatitis B. In Australia, it's like 0.3%. It's like 1 in 300 people have hepatitis B. Like, why are you giving this kid, on day one? And the reason is, they want to eradicate the disease, and the easiest way to do that is to make sure everyone gets it. I'm like, that logic makes sense, but what if it's causing other issues, right? Like I think the hepatitis B shot's got 250 micrograms of aluminium. The biggest thing with the vaccines, I think, is just research aluminium. Aluminium is nasty. Most of them have that in it. If you want to give it to them, great. Give it to them when they're 5 years old. Kids aren't going to share needles or have unprotected sex, in the first 5 years of their life. Like you're just creating extra risk for no benefit.
Yeah.
Like if you want to, I want to sort of be like, neutral, and I don't want to come across as like, oh, I'm anti. But if you want to do it, there is no reason to do it on day one. You're right. You do it when they're 5 or 10, and then they're protected, and then they're much less likely to have side effects from getting it on day one when they're tiny, barely developed immune system. You're giving the same amount of aluminium to a 3.5 kilo baby compared to a 30 kilo human. Well, that's effectively 10 times the dose, right? Like, because it's spread among a much larger body. So there's that. And then you start looking at, well, with any medication, does everyone get the exact same thing, or does everyone respond the same way? right? So, with certain medications, for whatever reason, you can't have it. You know what I mean? Or you shouldn't be given at a certain age, or, certain people just can't have it for whatever reason, right? With the vaccine schedule, every single kid gets the same doses at the same age at the same time. Does every kid need every vaccine? Like, I don't know, I'll just think about it logically, like, does every single child really need every single thing? Like, is there any variance at all? Like, what's going to be best for my kid? Is what, so with that, what they're doing is trying to give it to, they want everyone to be protected, right? And everyone to get it, but that might that might cause problems for your kid. Like, in the last 30 years, all these things have increased, right? Like, the eczema, autism, asthma, allergies, ADD, neurodevelopmental disorders, right? All these things have gone up in the last 30 years. And in, 1980s, kids got like, I think 7 doses of vaccines. Now in Australia, it's like 68, 69, right? So in 35 years, we've gone from, I think, 7 to 68. And you can't say that, at the same time, all these childhood diseases have gone up. Now, you can't say really that it's done it, but the correlation is there, and you need to look into it, right? And that's what, I think, that's where, more research needs to be done. But, you can look at it like, okay, mechanistically, a lot of these diseases are immune-based. Asthma's immune system, eczema, allergies, even autism is partly, mediated by changes in the immune system in the brain. And vaccines are augmenting the immune system, right? And we give them all these doses. So, if kids are getting all these things that are, problems with their immune system, and then we're hitting them 68 times in the first couple of years of their life with things that augment the immune system, that's, something you want to look into, right? So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to vaccinate your kid, like if you want, because obviously some of the diseases are bad. So protection is good. Like you could go in like, so like hepatitis B, if you want your kid to be protected from hepatitis B, well then logically you'd just do it when they're older. And then I think the biggest issue with it is how many they get in one go. And so when these are studied, and they're not studied very well, so none of them have been studied with a true placebo. So the true way to study a vaccine is you give, say, a kid Hep B, and then you give another group, or 100 kids Hep B and 100 kids saline placebo, follow them up for 1 to 3 to 5 years, and then see the difference in side effects. What is the difference in eczema, asthma, autism, ADD, ADHD? The kids who didn't, is there a difference? That study hasn't been done. So with the hepatitis B vaccine, when they got it approved, they did a study in 147 kids. There was no placebo, so there was no comparative placebo, and they had a safety period follow-up of 5 days. So they look at them, 140 kids, 5 days, these are the side effects, and that's what they use to approve it.
Yeah.
There's that, so that's so far off what you would want, right? So, people just got to, look into it. Like, obviously I understand people would want the whooping cough, right? Like that's, you don't want your young kid to get that. Like that is, I think in the US, on average, about 10 kids a year die from whooping cough, right? So obviously kids dying is terrible, but 10 across a country of 350 million is not many. But all the kids who die are under 6 months of age, right? Kids older than that, it's a bad illness, but they don't tend to die. And so, if once the kid's older than that, it's, it's not really so important to get it. Obviously, I think here they give it at 8 weeks. But the protection's not fully there until they've had the third one, right? So you're only partially protected after the first dose. You don't get the third dose until month 8 or month 12. And so by the time they get the third dose, they're fully protected. Well, then it's not a deadly disease anymore to them. So there's just so much to it, right? So I think, people need to do their research and make a decision, because people would be in their right mind to go, look, I want to get this one. Okay, I do want to get the whooping cough. I don't want to get the Hep B. Like measles isn't deadly. Like, everyone used to get measles back in the day. And some of them cause problems. Like now we have like chickenpox. Like I had chickenpox growing up. My family had chickenpox growing up. That's the most benign disease, so harmless, right? No, I don't think anyone dies getting chickenpox. And now that kids aren't getting natural immunity, they're getting shingles when they get older.
Yeah, because it used to be like if I never got it, but it was like, oh, if you get it, it's like, oh, like go catch it off them sort of thing. So you get it out of your
So
system.
you get it because you get lifetime immunity from the natural infection, and you just get it. It's nothing. It's a mild rash, and you get itchy or whatever, and it's contagious. But then they just get a mild rash, right? So, and that protects you. But then now kids are growing up without catching it. The vaccine immunity wears off, and they get shingles, which is much worse. In their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So you're better off just not. The chickenpox is so benign. Like why bother, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that people, you'd want to do your own research and think about it, where your values lie. Because obviously if vaccines didn't cause any side effects, like if these vaccines were truly safe and there was no risk of side effects, well, you just get them. Because it's like injecting water, right? They're completely benign. But obviously, they're not. And there's evidence like they've got mercury, not mercury anymore, aluminium, which is a big problem. Like if you learn about aluminium, like it's bad.
It's blood-brain barrier type stuff, right?
Yeah, well, it causes aluminium's one of the big potential contributors to Alzheimer's and autism. Like I've done a post on this, is they looked at brains of kids with autism, MS, Alzheimer's, and then healthy brains. And the three, they're all neurological diseases, right? Autism, MS, Alzheimer's all had much higher levels of aluminium. The healthy brains, were fine, right? So the ones with the three diseases had 3 times higher. So you don't want aluminium in your brain. You don't want and we get exposed to aluminium elsewhere as well. Like it's in medications, foods, whatever, right? You cook your food in tin foil all the time, you're getting some aluminium. But getting aluminium through the digestive system is much different to getting it injected.
Yeah.
Right? And we absorb a tiny amount of aluminium if it's in our food, in our gut. If you get it injected, well, it's, gets
straight in there.
Straight in there, right? So, if they're going to create vaccines safer, well then, get rid of the aluminium. Because the aluminium, and the other thing, the aluminium is there as an adjuvant. So it's designed to stimulate the immune system, right? Create an immune response, because you've got the virus in there, the dead, they use like a weakened or, version of the thing. But the problem is obviously because you don't want to catch the real thing. But the problem is because it's weakened, the immune system won't even create antibodies to it because it's not causing an immune response. So the purpose of that aluminium is to create a aggressive immune response, and then it does that at the same time as the vaccine's going in, and so then you get the antibodies. But the aluminium causes then these other potential problems, right?
Yeah, I'd love for you to expand upon how you're saying it's more increases if you've got a predisposition for it. It's not like it directly causes it, but if you're predisposed, then it's more likely for those things to come on.
Yeah, so this is like the epigenetics, right? So the relationship between the environment and genetics. And so why do some people get these issues? Like you see autism, right? Like they say it's genetics, it's not genetics at all. But you have a family of 3 kids and all 3 have autism. Well, that seems genetic, doesn't it? But it's because they are genetically predisposed to have reactions to whatever caused the autism. So it's not always, I think vaccines do cause a lot of cases of autism, but not all of them, like it's multiple things. And so, because why is autism, why is it an environmental thing, not a genetics thing? It's because we have this quick onset regression. So you have a kid that's developing normally, whatever he is, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months of age, and then bam, he regresses, right? Or she regresses. And so that's not genetic, right? Because it happened all of a sudden, whereas if it was like if they were born like that or didn't develop properly, but they're developing normal and then had this sudden regression, well, then that's something in the environment causing it. And so the relationship between the environment and the genetics, you have a genetic predisposition to be vulnerable to some sort of chemical or toxin. And so, at a certain period of your development. Also things like if you're nutritionally deficient in some things, right? Like if a kid's low in glutathione or, whatever nutrient, zinc, B vitamins or whatever, then they could be predisposed to getting it easier, right? So maybe they're exposed to pesticides or a vaccine and they have low nutrient status, low glutathione, low whatever.
Is vitamin A one as well?
Vitamin A, that could be, a number of things. But if you have low nutrient status and then get exposed to some sort of chemical exposure, then you might more likely develop it. Whereas if you had good nutrient status, then you might have been able to detox, the whatever caused it and been okay, right? Yeah. So it's a combination of the health status. So, how well, what's the nutrient status, right? Like, do you have a really good diet and a healthy, robust immune system, all that sort of stuff. And then the genetics, like some people, and that's what causes it. Genetically, some people have low, nutrients, right? They don't make glutathione as well, or they don't process vitamin A as well. Like, we get vitamin A from beta carotene, which is like carrots. That's not real vitamin A, it's plant vitamin A. And then you convert that into retinol, which is true vitamin A. And it's like 40% of the population can't do that conversion well, right? So you convert the plant vitamin A into retinol, which is true vitamin A. People have a genetic defect that you can't do that properly. So that's where you have to have a lot of animal foods, like meat, fats, and stuff like that, because that contains real vitamin A. So even if you can't do the conversion, well, then you're getting it from, the animal foods,
Somewhere
right?
else, yeah.
So it's just this relationship between the environment, the genetics, and also the person's health status, right? And that's why age is such a big factor, because when you have an undeveloped immune system, that's when you're so receptive or intolerant to these exposures. And so, talking about vaccines, if you want to vaccinate, well, I would say spread it out. If you're worried, like, in the 2 months, so the 2-month visit, kids are getting 8 shots in one go, 8 vaccines in one go. So you'll get the DTaP, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, which is whooping cough. You'll get, polio, the Hib, and there's 2 more. It's not MMR because that's not till they're older. There's 2 more, but there's 8 all up. And so that's just such an onslaught of, antigens from the, modified viruses themselves and the adjuvants and things like the aluminium and stuff into an 8-week-old kid.
Yeah.
It's a week? Yeah, 2 months, sorry. Yeah, 8-week-old kid. Just spread that shit out.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, like it's so simple, and, there's a reason, it's funny, like with the whooping cough, right? Young kids are so vulnerable to it. So why don't they give the whooping cough to them in day 1 as well?
Yeah, right.
Why not?
If the first 6 months is most dangerous, why do they wait?
Yeah, like the first 6 weeks, they make the family and the friends to visit the kid. They make them get the whooping cough because the kid can't have the whooping cough. You know why? Because it's not safe.
Yeah.
So they've figured out that obviously if you could protect the kid from whooping cough from day 1, that would be better. But, that we have to do it at 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it is, because it's obviously unsafe to do that. Now, is it unsafe for every kid at 6 weeks? Some kids, 6 weeks might be too early. I'd say for many kids it's too early. Yeah. But that's where they've drawn the line. How do you know your kid's going to be okay before 6 weeks or after 6 weeks?
Yeah, like what 6 weeks in a day, you just go, oh, we're good to go now. Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not early because obviously they want to protect people from whooping cough. Well, if it was perfectly safe, they would do it to everyone. There's a reason they made it 6 weeks is because you can't do it earlier because it's, the side effects are too great. Same with the, if it was perfectly safe, you just do them all on day 1. Do you know what I mean? But yeah. or in the first month, right? But anyway, so they've decided on what is safe schedule. We do these. The Hep B on day 1. You got 4-week, 8-week, 12-week, whatever, 6 month, and that's the decided schedule. But every kid doesn't fit that schedule, right? So if people are going to do it, I would be spreading them out as much as possible, and trimming ones that you don't need.
Yeah. Ask yourself if it's really necessary.
Yeah. Like, do you need the chicken pox?
Yeah.
Do you need the Hep B on day 1?
Yeah.
So, all you can do is look in and if you make the decision that you do want it, well, great, go for it. You know? But I think just it's unknown. Like, people have no idea. You just trust that, I need to protect the kid. And the stigma, that's the thing too, is the reason people don't look into it is because they don't want to know, because even if they see some information that's like counter, like, well, I'm not going to go against what the doc says, right? And they get shunned by, people don't tell. I think it's changed more since COVID. Like, I have no problem talking about it now. But previous to that, people wouldn't even tell people, or question them, right? Whereas now people like, if people ask me, what are you, going to do or whatever, I don't think they would care as much, right? Whereas people previously would be very judgmental.
Yeah. Well, that was
some people would be. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are still very judgmental.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting a lot better, and people are starting to think about it more. I think it's another positive of what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a weaponized argument against anti-vax. It was just anti-thought. It was just like if you questioned anything, it was like, tell them they're an idiot. Like, you know, cut them off from your family if they're not protecting you by getting this.
Don't have them over Christmas. That's
that type of shit.
And that was such a thing. Like, it was people were so scared to be called an anti-vaxxer. You know, like it was such a. But someone said to me, like, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm like, I don't care.
I was like, but it was like it's just pro-choice. Like that's all it was, really. I mean, I still wouldn't get it. So I guess anti. But I was like, do what you want if you want to do it, but maybe think about it and just like respect. Don't force people not to work or kids to not to be able to go to childcare because
exactly. Like that's right. If that's what makes me an vaccine, fine. But I'm just pro people making their own decision, right? And being transparent about the pros and cons of a medical intervention, right? Because you got to think too, vaccines are the only thing we give to healthy people. So normally, all drugs have side effects, right? But when you take a drug, you're taking it for an illness you already have to fix something. So, if you take blood pressure, cholesterol medication or surgery, whatever, you're taking it to fix something. So you go, well, it's worth these potential side effects because I already have a problem. When you have a vaccine, you have a healthy person. And so you're giving them something that could create a problem in a healthy person. So the standard of like the weighing up the risk benefit is a lot higher because that's a perfectly healthy person. And so if there's any risk at all, you have to take it more seriously because you're not trying to fix something, you're trying to prevent something.
Yeah. And like a lot of these things could be prevented just by living a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like so many people, like the Ozempic thing and taking drugs, which, Ozempic only starting to see side effects of it now is like the bone density and all that sort of stuff. It's like, or you could exercise more, eat better food, like, like taking liver tonics, all that sort of things, like, or limit your alcohol intake and all that sort of stuff.
All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like a lot of the diseases that vaccines protect against, if you have a healthy kid, if the person's healthy, they're much less susceptible.
Yeah.
Like, for example, before the vaccine came out for measles, I think it came out in like 64, the standard treatment for measles was vitamin A. And the reason that so many kids died from it in the early 1900s was because so many kids had malnutrition. They weren't getting enough vitamin. People underestimate how poor the community was in the early 1900s. Like the level of poverty was, unimaginable compared to what it is now. And people living off bread and oats and shit, right?
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people were going hungry, very nutrient deficient. And again, vitamin A, like the World Health Organization now recommends, 200,000 units of vitamin A twice in third world countries when they get measles as a treatment. Like if you catch measles, that's still the treatment is vitamin A. So if you have a good vitamin A status, measles, or you take vitamin A, you're going to be, it's going to be very mild. Whereas if you have, very low levels of vitamin A, well, then you're much higher chance of having, a very bad outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. I just think like I was just thinking then, I remember hearing about my granddad who grew up in the Depression. He was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
He had to have salt and pepper sandwiches for dinner. They were that poor.
Oh, fuck. That's what I mean. Like people don't appreciate just how bad, and that was, like almost like middle class back then, right? Like just normal, right? If you had a house over your head and some some salt and pepper sandwich for dinner, it was like, well, we're doing all right.
And my nan, mum grew up in New Zealand. Her parents were both Kiwi. Got an orange for Christmas.
No way.
That was like,
Holy shit.
That was like Christmas. And like mum went to school, like back then kids didn't even need to wear shoes to school. All their clothes like homemade.
Yeah.
By nan.
That's right. Yeah, like that's it.
It was really tough back then.
People had one good outfit they wore, right? Like, yeah. So that's the thing is that sanitation and nutrition have come a long way.
Yeah.
And if you look at, there's a chart that's commonly shared, but if you look at like the death rates from those diseases.
Yeah, like the Spanish flu and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, or the diseases like measles and all that sort of stuff. Like they, at 1900 they're up here and they come all the way down almost to the bottom, and then vaccines are introduced, and then obviously they can keep going down. But most of the work was done by sanitation, public health, good nutrition, right?
Yeah.
Before the vaccines were even introduced.
Yeah.
So that's, the vaccines didn't cause the massive reduction in infectious disease, right? It was our,
people stopped bathing in the Yarra River. And all
we had like public sewerage, stop living in squalor, eating some decent food, and just knowledge around, people being sick and obviously contagious and stuff like that. So
isn't it funny? Like those things decreased and around people getting more money, better economy, that sort of thing. But then when it increases is then when that changes. More money means overconsumption, those businesses trying to make more money, and that's where we get processed foods and all that other stuff, which causes other issues.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of those things helped, and then obviously, now we're with, like I said, processed food, and now people obviously have disease of like a disease of affluence, right? Like they don't have to move, they can access as many calories as they want that are not nutritious. Right, back in the day, there was a lack of calories, right? You couldn't, with a weekly paycheck, you struggled to access enough calories.
Yeah, like in the 60s, if you're trying to eat 4,000 calories a day to bulk, you're eating lots of potatoes, rice, and meat. You're not eating like a tub of ice cream after work.
Like, so it's obviously the challenges of being healthy are a bit different now. You're trying to avoid chemicals and shit, pesticides, shit in your food, fluoride in your water.
I've got a box up there.
Yeah, I do.
And even that, it's in a green bag, so aluminium. Like,
that's right. The box of water. Yeah, that's what I use when I travel. Yeah, I'll go to stay somewhere. Get that. It was funny. We were in the hospital with our kid. 7 weeks ago, she was born, and I had the big, the Pure AU water boxes. Yeah. And they're like, the nurses are like, midwives are like, what the fuck's that? That's our water. We're not drinking, tap water.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
No hospital food, no tap water in the places meant to keep people healthy.
Yeah. The hospital food was all right, actually. I was surprised. It was actually better than I thought. They had the breakfast was pretty average, but the dinner, it was better than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's funny that. I think just going over those, we're really poor. Now people need to work so much, so they shop for convenience and eat all the processed stuff.
Yep.
And now we kind of want to go back to that, but we still need this money. Need to work the amount of hours. You don't have time to prepare food every day.
Yeah.
It's kind of and you say economically with house prices and stuff, we really are in a very shitty time to be human, but also so blessed as well. Like we have great opportunities to get organic stuff. Like there was never, 10, 15 years ago, there was no organic butchers and all that sort of thing. Well, not that I know of anyway.
No, well, it's the food side of things come a long way. But like you said, like house price, all that sort of stuff too. Like that's, I know that's a rabbit hole in itself. But, with the, inflation, that's got a lot to do with the sort of fiat economy that we run on, right? Like that's, if you've gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you'll say that, like, for example, I just saw a meme the other day, like, a bar of gold, like a bar of gold in 1975 or something, was worth the same as a house, and that was about 64 grand.
Yeah.
And a bar of gold in 2025 was worth the same as a house, which is worth 1.3 million. So a bar of gold bought you a house in 1975. A bar of gold will buy you a house in 2025. The bar of gold hasn't changed. It's our money that has gotten worth less, right? Yeah. So through debasement of currency and inflation, the average, incomes become less. And prior to 1971, the currency was on a gold standard, right? So your paycheck was worth equivalent to dollars. Like, in the US, I think it was 1 ounce of gold was worth $35, right? And that was the same. Like they were linked together. In 1971, they come off there's a good website if you want to look into this. It's called WTF happened. So what the fuck? WTF happened in 1971. And it shows all these graphs of inflation and average income and wages and house prices. Yeah. And you can see that when we come off the gold standard, a lot of these issues happened. And why people can't afford a house now, even though, gold's worth the same, relative to a house. Like people like house prices have gone up so much, which they have. But the problem is that wages haven't kept up.
Yeah. Well, I think, I can't remember what year it was, but house prices used to be 4 times an average wage. And it's about 12 times an average wage.
That's right. So it's just getting... obviously further out of reach, or makes it a lot harder. I mean, part of that too is in our average interest rate now is a bit lower, so people can borrow more, but it's still way out of skew of what it should be.
I met a bloke at work. He was 86, or he is 86, Hungarian guy. Came over here when he was 16. They had the war over then in the 50s and communist government, all that sort of thing. He was like, got to get out of here, left. Came to Australia, was here for 2 years working on Burke Road in textiles or something. Bought his first house for £300.
Wow.
At 18 in Mount Eliza.
That's insane.
Yeah, £300.
Oh my God.
What was that? Late 50s?
Yeah, late 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, £300. He's like, then I bought another one in Frankston South for $800, and then the next one for Incoringle for $1,200.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so he's
that's
property,
wild, huh?
and he was earning, I believe he said 100. He was earning I think it was like 6 times more than the average wage at the time. He got a good job.
Yeah.
But he still said within 2 years of being in the country, he's buying his first house, second house, third house.
Whereas
in
now,
2 years.
Whereas now you got to save, if you want a 20% deposit, you got to save $200,000.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Save $1,000 a week for 4 years, and that's a lot. Who can, not many people can save $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
So it's definitely blown out in that regard.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, there's no way you're buying a house by yourself these days.
That's it. You got to. A lot of people, I think, if you live, especially if you live in a capital city, you got to look at like rent investing or something, right?
Yeah.
Rent where you want to live and buy in a regional town and get a $400,000 or $500,000 house and at least get into the market. It's obviously you'd rather not do that, but that's like kind of where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking after living in Darwin for a period of time, seeing it. To buy over there, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And bigger land sizes. Like, they're just starting to build for those who are in Melbourne, the Bromptons, that like they're only just starting.
Yeah, like housing estates and stuff.
Yeah, housing estates. But like all of them are big open plan houses, apart from the units in the city. And everyone's got a pool. Like, there's so much land space. So that's
some good blocks there and stuff.
Yeah, like if you're looking to invest, not financial advice, look outside of a major city that's super condensed.
Well, that's like Queensland, like just before COVID, like Queensland was so cheap, right?
Dude,
I know people who moved up to Queensland and just their house price doubled in 3 years.
Yeah.
And because it was just, and people who invested in Brisbane and Queensland prior, like in the 2017, 18, 19, like just being flat or backwards, just no growth. And then 2021, everyone moved to Queensland and just had a boom cycle.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, I was looking at a guy at work that I was working with at the time, was looking at moving to Brisbane, and he was showing me houses, and it was like 3 bed, 2 bath, 320 grand.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, it's insane,
Because I was looking to get out of here as well, and I was looking on the Murray, and it was the same sort of price, on the border, and now, not a chance. Well, same thing, got priced out. Interest rates went up, inflation went up, everyone went crazy, but it's crazy to see how much that changed, and also to see how much people wanted to leave Victoria to go to other places. But yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you think, well, is it going to keep going? Like, it's gone from 4 times salary to 12 times salary. Like, I don't know, it can't go to 18 times salary, surely? I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, at some point, like, you can't keep blowing out the ratio, but I don't know, maybe wages will go up and house prices will increase, on suit, or, I don't know, more people will buy regional. I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting.
It's interesting, yeah.
Like, it's something I took a big interest in. That's why
you were now in finance, right? So it'd be,
started doing it at uni and that, but seeing that they just dropped rates, I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I've just studied it for a little bit. Like, it's not I don't work in the economics space. I work in a bank and that sort of thing. But I was like, that's a really interesting call, because they already said house prices have started to go up from the last one. The whole point is to try and stop that. So why are they dropping rates again? Like, are people now going to get priced out again?
Well, it's hard because like as someone who has a mortgage, like you're desperate for rates to go down, right? Because they're smashing you every month. And so obviously inflation's under control now. So that's, they want to do that. But obviously that is fuel for, if people can, as interest rates go down, the borrowing capacity of everyone goes up. And obviously that allows people to, more people to afford a house, right? So it is going to be fuel for growth again. But
Yeah, it's cool because the rental market's so expensive that people may be better off buying a house if they've got a partner or something, or a guarantor, because everyone's equity would be, or parents' equity would be through the roof as well. So yeah, it's an interesting problem. See how they solve it. My solution personally has been investing in crypto since 2021.
Yeah, nice.
And I've just had no trust in government or general finance or the ability to buy off a single wage. So I've been trying to look outside the box.
Well, I think,
so that's where I'm looking.
I think, I'm very interested in crypto. Like in earlier years, in the earlier cycles in 2017, and made and then lost a lot of money because I didn't know what I was doing. But I think especially, I think you got to separate too between Bitcoin and crypto, because they're two different things. Plenty of I think Bitcoin's an amazing capital preservation tool, to protect your time, because what happens when you have inflation, really, when the governments want to spend more money, then they earn and run constant deficits, they print money, they debase the currency, and that's eroding your labor, right? That's why, you have to work so much, think of how many hours you have to work to buy a house or a carton of eggs or whatever. Well, when the government creates inflation, and they do create, they say they blame it on other shit, but it's really the government creates inflation through
wars overseas and
just I mean, just spend, if you increase the money supply, then the price of everything goes up. It's like economics 101, right? So they're stealing your time because your wages don't go up as quick as inflation. And so, Bitcoin is like in my opinion, is such an unbelievable invention that you can use to protect your savings. Instead of putting cash under the bed, gold's much better than cash. And then, some could argue that Bitcoin's better than gold.
Yeah.
Or have a bit of both.
Yeah. And like this cycle has been a really interesting one because it's, it did go up. It's at an all-time high, I believe, as of Thursday.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised by because it's been so flat, so I just haven't checked.
Yeah, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's been like it hit, I think 180 Australian, right? It got to 112, 113 US.
Yeah.
And no one's really talking about it. So I think we've got a long way to go this cycle.
Yeah.
Especially if they're going to, if interest rates are dropping internationally. And that's fuel for it, and also increasing liquidity and government's money printing again.
Yeah. It's interesting because 2021 was huge, which is 4 years ago. It was the 21st of May when they had that massive dip.
Yes.
And everyone was like, is it over? Is it back? It came back.
And it came back up. Yeah.
But that's around that time. So thinking like cyclically, we should be experiencing a drop.
Yes.
And I was like, because last time it was kind of false because if you adjust for inflation, when it came back up, it was kind of the same. Like it just kind of just went back to where it was.
It was almost like a double top. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for the dip. Or like a real dip.
Yes.
Not just, the 10 to 20% that we've been seeing. But we haven't seen a blow off top either. So it's a really interesting cycle. It seems like it's a change for the crypto space now where it's seeing more of a stock market, which is more normal. You get peaks and troughs, that sort of thing. But there hasn't been a parabolic up.
Yep.
There hasn't been a massive drop. I'm fingers crossed for the parabolic up, but it's a watch this space for me at the moment. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think I hope and I think that we've got more to run this cycle. It's hard. I don't know if we'll get a parabolic blow off top because there's so many institutions involved now, big money. They tend to take a lot better at taking profits on the way up, which stops the massive run up. But I think so much institutions getting. Obviously, we've got a crypto pro administration in the US. That's massive. And all the ETFs and all this institutional adoption. I mean, there's an Australian ETF now, right? So you can buy if you're a Australian and you have super, or you don't want to go on exchange and buy Bitcoin, you can just buy the Australian ETF and effectively own Bitcoin through that. So it's just so much easier for large amounts of money to access it.
Yeah, even like Raise, is it? Raise or neobanks have like
you can
get allocation to it now.
Yeah, I think it's on all your banking apps you'll be able to see crypto in there. You go on your AMZ or Comback app, and at some point, like they're holding out, but I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it'll just be like, because that's the hard thing is having custody of it, which stops people. Like, you got to have your own wallet, remember your passphrase or your seed. And if you lose it, you're gone, right? So that holds a lot of people back, or they keep it on an exchange, which isn't safe.
Yeah.
And so when when banks have custody of it, that's, it's not the true ethos of Bitcoin because it is being a sovereign individual and holding your own, your own capital,
keys,
your own keys. But for normies who want to get into it and invest in it, if you can just look at it on your Comback app or ANZ app, and you don't have to worry about remembering your password. If you lose your password, call them up, they give you a new one. They're looking after the custody because that's the biggest barrier to the average person is learning how it works and the custody of it.
Yeah.
That's sort of developing more and more.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because the whole point of the crypto space at the start was, fuck the government,
yes,
fuck the banks.
That's right. I know it's a lot of touchy subject. Like, like on crypto Twitter a lot. And, people talk about that. It's kind of like, some people are like, well, it's sort of against the ethos of what it was. Like, we don't need we got a pro crypto administration, but like, we don't want the government supporting Bitcoin. Like, it's anti-government, right? And then obviously we got the ETFs, and now, BlackRock are one of the biggest owners of Bitcoin, for their clients. And so, then they have control over it as well, right? So, obviously there's downsides to becoming adopted, but then if you want the price to go up, you need adoption.
Yeah, that's why, like, at the start, it was like, when I was spending hours a night just watching YouTube.
Yeah.
And it was always like, fuck XRP. Like,
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, that's my biggest holding. Because I was like, well, at the end of the day, if you can't beat them, join them. If that's what we're going to be using, like, you don't miss out on the money.
Yeah. Well, it's such a cult, like, hate or love communities, the whole XRP thing, like, and it's done well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Do you hold any?
I don't actually. No, I don't. So
Yeah.
I don't know. In my sphere of like, crypto people I've learned from, it's sort of been like, like I first got into crypto in like 2014, and sort of crypto XRP was sort of seen as like, a banker's coin, right? So people didn't like it. And so I just, I haven't got any, but now it's got this like cult following, and when someone says to me, "Oh, I've just got into crypto," I'm like, "Oh, I got XRP." Like, how the hell? Like everyone who's when they first get into it, they hear about it, and get it. But yeah, it's had a crazy run up this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's done really well this cycle. Last cycle didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything, yeah.
So yeah, that's, I think, the cycles, or most cryptos now just run on hype. Like a lot of people, like you said, everyone just knows about it. So if everyone's buying, $10, $20 around the world, or not, around first world countries that have access to it, it's going to go up. Whether to see the use case is implemented, like, the ISO 2022.
I've heard of that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of coins that have that certification, and they've done well or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just so hard with old coins because there's so many of them now, and I hold it. I'll trade or hold a few for fun. Yeah. But I don't know. I've made and lost so much money previously.
Yeah.
That now I want to be a bit safer with what I do.
Yeah.
And so nowadays I stick to mostly the mate. I'll trade smaller terms, short term, but then just try and hold on to the big players, especially just Bitcoin as a because I think Bitcoin will be here in 20 years. I don't know about everything else. They might be, and they might do better, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on what your risk appetite
that's right,
is.
and it depends on your risk appetite is. That's right. And that's not saying that's the right way to do it. That's sort of where I'm leaning to these days.
Yeah, I haven't bought any for a while. It hasn't been doing much. I don't know. I bought some stocks, just a little bit, and it just happened to be the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, a few weeks ago when all that stuff happened, and then it's come back up, which is cool. Like bugger all money, not much. But I was like, oh,
you got a good bounce though.
Yeah, but I got like 14% over
That's
2 days.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you can make money. You just got to time the market, which is impossible.
No, but that's right. It was a good time to buy. With all the tariff scare and everything was down. Crypto was down. Stocks were down. So was it start of April? About a month ago. It was a bit longer than a month ago. But yeah.
But I think people need to look to investing now. Like, because I asked one of the lenders at work, I'm like, what are you doing with the money you're saving from your rates going down? He's like, I'm just putting it in my offset. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
But that's, again, his risk appetite. That's his area of expertise. But he's, saving a couple % by having more in his offset.
Yep.
You could buy index funds historically over the years. 10% gain. Crypto more. I think basically what I'm trying to say is, like, you should really learn about money in any sense. If you're trying to get better, like, it's so hard to earn off a wage because our money is just being decreased over time.
Yep.
Invest in invest in education.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah, invest in yourself. I mean, if you can save, 10% of your wage a year and put it into an index fund, or you can maybe put some of that into education that's going to allow you to increase your income by 30%. Obviously that's a better return, right? If you can do things to educate yourself and increase your income, that's awesome.
Like what you did at 20, your Charles Poliquin education, or educating a coach or a mentor about the bloods analysis. That's a way better rate of return than an index fund or a high interest ING bank account or whatever.
That's right. And those things are great too. But that's right. It's just and then once maybe you're into the steady job and your income's not going to, you're sort of in a set thing. Well, then you put your extra into some some sort of vehicle, because that's like we're talking about, like, how we're on a fiat monetary system, and we used to be on a gold standard. But when we're on a gold standard, you could actually just save dollars under the mattress, right? Because your currency held its value. Because holding dollars was the same as holding gold. And so now, since 1971 and this whole, inflation in the basement of currency, it's made people, unfortunately, you have to do your job and also be educated in investment because your wage has been, debased away. So if you don't learn, like in Australia, we love property, right? In the US, there's more stocks.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something, even if it's just if it's an index fund or something, with your extra money. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to sort of build wealth over time.
Yeah, like inflation is what they aim for is 2 to 3%. Your banks now, that'll drop in the next week. I know CommBank's dropping their rates on the 30th.
Yeah,
you're probably going to get under 4% for your savings account. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making less than 1% on your money.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't even think to put it in a savings account that's earning that, you're losing money just by having it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's crazy.
And then the true inflation rate is higher, what they say, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly
the
right.
official inflation rate is whatever, 2.5 or whatever, when really, you know, it's whatever, 7 or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, how funny was it in that period of like hyperinflation? They go, oh, it's 9%. It's like, well, I've just gone to buy frozen fruit at the shops. I used to buy it for $4, now it's $6. That's 50%.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
What's your grocery shop cost? Because I guarantee it's more than 10% of what it was 2 years ago.
100%. Like the CPI figures are very, fudged or, molded to...
It can be skewed by a couple of things.
Yeah, like for example, I think I don't know if it was the US or Australia, but coffee prices went up heaps not long ago. I think it was like 6 months ago. Like went ballistic because of something happened with a plantation or something.
Yeah.
And then the month later, they removed coffee from the CPI. So because that would have obviously made the CPI go up and said, oh, no, we're taking coffee out.
Yeah.
So things like that. There's a site called Trueflation, I think it's called.
Yeah,
which that gives you like a more accurate measure of inflation. That's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it's higher than what they say.
Yeah, start listening to podcasts, read books, read studies, all that sort of stuff. You learn so much.
Yeah.
Or like the the American debt calculator.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is
Insane. You see it ticking over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
It's very interesting what's going on in the US and like actually trying to cut spending. I don't know if it's going to succeed, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. What's your thought on the tariff stuff?
The tariff stuff, that was a whole thing. So obviously, the big thing is Trump thinks the US isn't getting a fair deal, on a lot of things, because other countries do. I didn't know until this whole thing started, but other countries do impose tariffs on US imports, but the US doesn't impose tariffs on them. And also the trade deficit is the major thing, like, basically the US imports more than it exports, has a big trade deficit, and that contributes to their debt issue. But part of that is like the US being the world reserve currency, they kind of need to have a budget deficit because all the other currencies want US dollars. And so if all these other countries need US dollars to like pay their debts and buy shit, it kind of makes the US need to have a deficit because they need to give dollars out to other people and then they spend it to bring shit back in. But anyway, with Trump, I think I saw a thing like his book Art of the Deal. It kind of like was basically lead with an offer that's like over the top and would be scary to the other person, and then get them off foot, and then and is more than what you actually want. I mean, it's a pretty simple negotiation tactic, but and then obviously you end up meeting somewhere in the middle, right? And so that's exactly what played out with the tariffs.
Yeah.
And it caused a big scare in the markets because the markets hate uncertainty, right? And so when there's 140% tariff on China and China has 150% tariff on the US, and obviously it's easy to see in hindsight, but that wasn't going to last, and now they've come back, there's paused or whatever, and it's going to be, I don't know what the long term is going to be. Obviously the goal is to get more manufacturing back into the US, but and it will, but I don't know how what it's going to be on the price of goods, and he had a massive, he did a post on Twitter yesterday, Trump, like, Tim Cook, the iPhone CEO, Apple CEO, they're going to move from China to India. And he's like, no, I want you to move from, I want you to manufacture in America. If you don't, it doesn't matter if it's not China, I'm going to be putting a 25% tariff on Apple if they're not in America. But I mean, it's not that simple either, right? Obviously, people don't want to pay more for iPhones. Apple doesn't want to charge more for iPhones. If you make it in America, it's probably going to cost more. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. What I do like, though, I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of issues, in the economy and that. I mean, at least I appreciate Trump for having the balls to try something. Like, the same in Australia. We have so many issues here and no one has the balls to try anything that's outside of the status quo. Like fucking, we don't have any leaders with any balls. They're so... contained in their ideas, like, oh, we can do this or this. Their ideas are just stuck in this narrow field, when the possibilities are out here, but they won't try anything that's, really brazen or, that can actually work.
Yeah.
With a whole bunch of issues, you could talk about house prices or any of the other issues that we have, debt, whatever. But, at least he's, trying some shit. I don't know if it's going to work, but,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, whatever's been been doing over the last decade or so clearly is not doing well. So why can't we do anything different? And that's why he got in. It was like, he's not a politician, or wasn't a politician. Like,
that's
well, these other guys suck, so we'll give you a go.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
the replacement sucked, so he's got another go.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's very, very interesting just to watch it play out. And I think, some of the things, obviously some of it was like a backlash from like the woke culture as well.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of reasons that it worked, but and they got in. But I see us going down. A lot of Western countries are going down the path, with like mass migration. So much, moving more towards socialism, extra government spending. The US sort of turning a corner there and sort of pushing back against, some of those philosophies. I think it's a good thing, and sort of, if it works, it looks, that's really, because that creates conversation.
Yeah.
If they turn their economy around, and do really well, well then, other countries like here, UK, Canada, sort of go, okay, well that, you can hate on them all you want, but if it worked, well then, we should consider something.
Yeah. Obviously the Australian equivalent's Clive Palmer.
Yeah.
Well, that's the comparison.
That's the comparison.
What was your thoughts on that and why it didn't work? Because he obviously literally piggybacked off it.
He literally
trumpet of patriots.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about him. I know that he spent a shitload. I think he spent 100 million on the campaign, or 60 million, whatever it was, and didn't win one seat, right? So that's pretty average effort. He's got some good ideas. I think in Australia though, we're just too. How you going until something's really wrong?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not worried. And also we're much more left leaning than the US. Like, the US, the cool thing about the US is, they got this constitution, and, that was written, in a way, because they were worried of a tyrannical government, right? They've just broken away from the crown of the UK or, England. And, that was written, because, with the whole thing of getting away from a tyrannical government and protecting the people from an overarching government. And so they have that in their blood. And so Australia, we're just like, how you going? The government look after us, right? So that, the government's our friend.
Yeah. The country's built off criminals being given land and houses and stuff. So.
Yeah, and it's just obviously a different culture and a different history. And so, I think, I don't know, things in certain areas have to get worse before there's, real change happen, I don't know. I'm not massive on politics, but it's interesting to see, things aren't going amazing here, but then, we've got the obviously the same party got in, but then, the other party was shit too. Like, they have shit, they're shit, right?
Yeah.
So there's both options of shit, really.
Yeah, literally. I didn't know who to vote for. I was looking, I'm like, dude, they all suck. And that's that every time.
Yeah,
but
that's
this
what you
time
feel
was
like
even worse. Dutton, they couldn't have had a worse face for the Liberal Party other than maybe Barnaby Joyce, just because they've both had such big things go down for them in the media, publicly.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was never going to work.
And they don't stand for anything, right? Like they're sort of people say Labor light, you know what I mean? Like, they've gone, I don't know, they should, stand for their original values. Like, if you go on the website and read, I haven't done this, but I'm sure they've got, what their mission and values are. And what they're doing is not matching that. It's weak leadership. And that's partly why Trump won, is because he actually stood for something and went what was seen as radical but needed to be done.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, they're just a softer version of what their sort of core values really used to be.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that they, did terrible.
Yeah.
Even though I don't like, I think Labor, like I said, handouts, like the biggest, I know you're working finance, the most horrible thing I've ever seen is tax on unrealised gains in super. So I don't know if you've heard about that, but Labor
tax before they sell it,
So if you got a super balance over 3 million, you get gains. So
I've seen that.
So say now you have a super balance of 3 million, and in a year, stock market goes off and it's 4.5 million. Well, you've made $1.5 million over $3 million, and so you get taxed. Even if you don't sell it, you get taxed 15%. Like having a tax on unrealized gains is just the worst idea you could possibly have economically. And then it opens it up. Well, we're going to tax unrealized gains because then you have to sell to pay the tax.
Yeah.
Right. So say you own stocks in your super, or say you own property in your super, your property goes up. So you've made $1.5 million in unrealized gains because you haven't sold it. Like normally you sell a house, you don't pay capital gains until you sell something. Right?
Yeah.
And so say you make $1 million, you're going to be taxed 150 grand. If you can't pay that, you have to sell the asset to pay the tax.
Yeah.
It's out of control, right? And so it's just a horrible socialist policy, and it's just the worst thing I've ever seen. And just opens up, like it's only over super balance is over 3 million. Like it's only for rich people. Like if you're in your 20s now, your super balance will be over 3 million in 2050.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if inflation goes
3 million won't be a lot of money.
No.
Yeah.
Like $1 million isn't a big deal now, right?
Yeah, you're a millionaire if you own a house almost. Like
So it's just so short-sighted. That's one. That's just taxing unrealized gains. Like that's what the Biden administration talked about before they got in. They wanted to tax the ultra-rich and unrealized gains, but it just creates a slippery slope. It's just bad. Yeah. It's just bad policy. And it just stops you from being able to escape the matrix, right? Like if you're getting taxed on unrealized gains, like if you have to sell your assets to pay the tax, because if it goes down the next year, like you pay the tax. So say you have a property and it goes up and you pay the 150 grand tax. Well, then whatever goes down the next year, you don't get a refund for the tax you paid. So now you've lost 150 grand. So your house has gone from, 3 million to 4.5. You pay 150 grand tax. Now it goes back to 3 million. We're 150 grand down.
Yeah.
Because it was paid on unrealized gains.
Yeah.
So it's pretty messed up.
The amount of people I've spoken to at the bank recently about they want to start their own self-managed super fund because of what's just happened, like with the stock market going up and in there.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm retiring in 2 years. My super's just gone down 15%. Like.
Yeah.
Control. Yeah. So imagine if they lost another 150 on top of that or something.
That's right. That's it. So
or had previously paid the tax and then that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're down even more, right? So that's just a
taxing the rich is like the stupidest thing anyway, because like what they say is the wealthy are smart enough to avoid tax anyway. All you're doing is taxing the hard workers that haven't that have put it away and saved it, and it also disincentivizes like forward thinking and innovation and all that sort of stuff, because those people end up making heaps of money, like the Musks and all that sort of thing. Like obviously he started.
It grows the economy, right? That provides jobs. I mean, Norway a couple of years, might have been 5 years ago, they introduced a pretty hefty wealth tax.
Yeah.
And all the best people left the country.
Yeah.
Like all the big, all the high net worth people left the country.
Yeah.
Like, and now it's getting worse. Like countries are creating an exit tax, as well. Like, and that's the problem as our Western countries go further into debt, they're going to clam down on getting capital out of the country or providing tax. With these
China and Dubai have that, right?
China has proper capital controls.
Yeah.
I don't know about. Dubai has no tax. I don't think they have.
No, like a exit thing. Like
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about Dubai. But as governments get more into debt, they're going to clamp down harder on ways to avoid tax and implement more stupid ways to tax people.
Yeah.
I mean, have a look here. Like there's a massive protest the other day about the new tax the Victorian government.
Yeah. What was? I didn't hear it. Someone was telling me about there's a new tax.
It was the fire levy, I think. So you pay a emergency services levy. I think for fire and emergency services, but they basically just changed it and increased it, I think. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I'm a fan of smaller government as possible, because when they mismanage funds, this is the thing, they mismanage their finances. They then implement new taxes on you. If you don't pay them, it's basically a threat of violence. If you don't pay them, you go to jail.
Yeah.
So they can fuck up and mismanage money all they want. They can force you to pay it whether you can afford it or not. And if you don't, you go to jail.
Yeah.
And so if there's a small government and they look after the finances, it doesn't get to that point, right? And the bigger, like I saw another thing the other day, which is a problem with Australia, is that we have the highest ratio of government workers in the world to average workers. So 15% of all workers in Australia work for the government.
Really?
It's yeah. And so
what are they doing?
Yeah, it's just, that's right. We just have such a bloated bureaucracy in the government. And of course, that's, with the election as well, they vote to protect themselves, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a more socialist-leaning government that is going to provide, I mean, the best job now is a government job, right? Like you get more people in government jobs, and like 15% is a lot.
Yeah.
And they're of course they're gonna and the culture in those institutions is more socialist, right? Like it's the same with uni. Like is uni crazy, right? When I finished uni in 2012, right? So that wasn't there, but I've only seen online.
It's the leftiest propagandist setup.
Yeah, like it's full lefty, right? Like hard, and it's
even into the education, like the stuff they're telling you. Like they were talking about vaccines, and I was doing a finance and economics course. I'm like, this has got nothing to do with it. Why are you talking about the safety of stuff? Like obviously, I was going in 2022, 23.
Yep.
Like, why is that part of the curriculum? Like, what are you trying to push? Like, crazy stuff.
And so, all these institutions in the, the academic institutions, the media, I mean, look at our media. It's very, very heavily left-leaning.
Yeah.
You look at the number of TV channels that are left-leaning versus right. I mean, there's the only right-leaning TV station is Sky News, which is on pay-per-view, right? Whereas, 10, 7. I mean, our two government-funded TV stations, Channel 2 and SBS, or ABC and SBS, are basically left-wing propaganda arms, right? Like it's the leftiest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's our, and our money funds that. You know what I mean? No matter what you think, you fund it. I mean, I don't watch it, but I still, you get taxes funded. It's crazy.
We're an aging population. The only people that watch it are old as, but they're getting a large portion of the population.
Yeah,
really.
SBS and ABC. Yeah, who watches that except for the older folks? So, but all these institutions, have this. This strong ideology that way, and so that's a large percentage of the population, and so it makes it hard to swing it, because it's so far, people might watch this and go, I hate the left wing right thing, but you're right, but I would call myself centrist.
Yeah.
But the problem is the left has gone further left.
Yeah.
Since I'm the same as I was since 2012, right? But a lot of people say that, like Elon Musk has said that before. I'm just the same dude, but the left has gone all the way over here, and I'm still the same.
Yeah.
And so they look at me saying, you're right wing or whatever, but it's been a can of worms, huh? Fuck, I've put out a lot of out their opinions on this thing, about vaccines, Bitcoin, finances, politics.
Yeah,
it's like Jesus.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, if you went back 10 years and even knees over toe stuff, that would be like.
That was controversial back then.
Like I remember in high school when I did a cert for fitness and stuff straight out of school. It was always you need to squat within straight. It's 90 degrees and all that sort of stuff. And now it's like full the fitness industry's changed so much. I've got a friend he's teaching at uni now and he's done exercise science and he's like, dude, I don't all the stuff that I'm teaching. He's like, I don't even believe it anymore. But they're not the science. What they're teaching hasn't changed for years and years and years. So outdated.
That's right. Yeah, it's so outdated.
He's the same. He wears barefoot shoes, all that sort of stuff. He's a strength coach, all that sort of thing. He's like, yeah, what I'm telling him, if I was telling them behind closed doors, it would be two different stories almost.
Yeah, it's crazy that, that's the hard thing with centralised education is it's very slow to change, right? And it's a tough thing with, uni as well. That I was learning that stuff, don't put your knees, when I did my PT cert in 2010, it's 15 years ago now. Don't put your knees over your toes. And I went to Pollock and he's like, no, you want to go right over your toes. That's what athletic positions get into that position. I was like, oh my God, this is, I don't know. I just had a draw to that. I was against conventional sort of thing, as long as it made sense logically. You don't go against conventional wisdom just because it's against conventional. But but then interesting, they're still teaching similar stuff, in certs 3s and 4s, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of educational, that's why I think online, AI and online education is going to change learning so much.
Yeah, even podcasting and stuff like that.
Podcasting.
Stuff we're talking about when they are well-respected people, even Chris Williamson is not science or anything, just the people he gets on. It opens up the opportunity for education for people like Andrew Huberman and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Everyone knows about ice bars. Everyone knows about all these sorts of things and
it's
dopamine and all that sort of stuff where no one knew about that before podcasting and that sort of
That's
thing.
right. And it's such a common topic now. Like, that's right. You'd have to be in a fringe group or community to learn about that stuff. And now it's everywhere. Like, everyone, even if you don't give a shit about ice baths, you've heard about it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a common thing.
Yeah.
And dopamine and, detoxes and all that stuff, right? So it's cool. Like, health is such a bigger conversation now, and people, even if they live an unhealthy lifestyle, people are aware that it's there.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's easy to access, like back then, that's why I loved doing seminars back then, because there was no, you either read a website or you go to a seminar, right? And that's why, talking about the institutions, like universities and education, is so slow. My philosophy has always been find the person who's the best at the thing you want to learn and pay them or find a way to learn from them. So I did that, with Charles Poliquin and training nutrition and other people as well. Obviously the blood stuff, and that's the quickest way to speed up your progress is find people who are exceptional. Doesn't matter if they're qualified, or have the best certifications or whatever, but you want to find people who are getting results and are exceptional and learn from them.
Yeah, results speak a lot greater than pieces of paper. Especially these days as well, because there is so much differing opinions on the same thing, like what food you should eat, how you should do exercise, what rep ranges or whatever. It's like what works, and then also be able to read between the lines and also what works for you as well, I guess. There's so much blurred stuff, but being able to I don't know, be able to have an open mind.
I think so. I think definitely. And we've got unlimited access to information now. You don't even have to look for it now. You can just plug it into ChatGPT or some other thing. And so it's so easy to learn if you want to learn anything. Whether it's making money or getting healthy or whatever. Like, it's never been easier. But you just got to have discernment and
that's the word.
Discernment, and between what's potentially useful or what's good and what's not.
Yeah, perfect. Well, hopefully this is one of those spaces where you can learn something, or you have learned something. And if you do want to outsource your learning and you want to get some help about health, bloods, all that sort of stuff, you can hit up Brent. I'll drop a tag and all that sort of stuff so I can find you. And
awesome, mate. You can find me on easy place is Instagram, just my name, Brent Cosnett. That's probably the best place, to be honest.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Legend.
Appreciate
Thanks for having me on, man.
Cheers.
It's been a good chat.
Yeah. Ta.